Good afternoon and welcome to Midday Live. I am Wendy Lai. Coming up this afternoon. Conference of Heads of Assisted Schools CHASS demands government immediately releases funds for subsidies or the schools risk being closed down. NADMO goes technological as it develops an app that detects flooding. And hundreds of tributes pour in for multimedia's broadcaster Kabah as a memorial service is held in his honor. And on the international front, Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe reacts with time as his party, ZANU-PF, commences processes to impeach him after he failed to step down by 12 noon local time on Monday. We have sports and entertainment coming up shortly. Let's start with our stories now. And the national president of the Conference of Heads of Assisted Secondary Schools, CHASS, Mrs. Cecilia Kwakye-Kofi, has asked government to, as a matter of urgency, release subsidies which have been in arrears for 3 terms to the schools. CHASS says the schools risk being closed down if the absorbed fees by government does not reach them immediately. CHASS added, although the heads of schools have submitted the enrollment figures and also engaged government on several occasions, nothing was forthcoming, saying it is a fact that heads of schools are under serious pressure but are afraid to voice out for fear of intimidation and sanctions. The CHASS president also called on government to revert procurement of items to the traditional suppliers since, in her estimation, the new contractors may not have the capacity to supply food items to the schools. Both the Ghana Education Service and the Ministry of Education will not comment on the matter. We'll bring viewers up to speed on developments as and when we're able to reach them. Away from that story, the Ghana Highway Authority says it had no alternative than shutting down the Yape and Bupe bridges after realizing it was collapsing. Public Relations Officer of the authority, Dinah Sade, in an interview with TV3, indicated it remains unclear when the work will begin on the bridge.
Okay, we stated that the central pier we're having problems. We've been able to sustain it, but because we had the road restriction to us up to the axle configuration of 20 tons. Okay, what you should know that I stated that the last time when you asked that I was saying 2 things at the same time is that repair works or rehabilitation cannot be fulfilled when at a point you don't close off or cut off to be able to have a proper routine at work. So that is the stage we have reached right now. And we think we don't want any disruption. We want to go to work straight and complete it. Starting from tomorrow, we don't want anybody.
But doesn't this come as a ad hoc decision? Just Sunday morning, people just wake up and there is a press release from the Ghana Highway Authority that they are closing the road. Couldn't you have done some more work?
To the public, it seemed ad hoc. But
does that make it right?
No, for an engineering work. Sometimes we don't even need to explain to the public because we have just realized the situation. It could even be a newly built bridge, and our climate and things could affect things for it to come to a standstill. So certain decisions, if we think that it is in the interest of this country, if it has to be during Ramadan, Christmas, or Dawn, we will stop.
Now, there are some alternate routes that have been made available.
Yeah.
If you could take us through those routes. And there are some concerns that some of these very routes that you are asking drivers to use are not in the right shape. So probably all these things could have been resolved if the right things were done early on.
Everything is being done right. You know, the alternative route we've provided the last time is the same thing we are going to give out now. We have asked contractors to go and work on critical sections to make the access smooth for our publics. And right now, as I'm talking to you, our engineers are rushing to site, not as an afterthought, because there are people already working on the rehabilitation, but we're also just going to see, whilst we were working on those critical sites, were there other places that have developed certain issues that we thought were okay at the time? As for anticipation, anything is necessary or anything could happen. So we have anticipated. But if we have to be faced with this, that's how we are dealing with it.
Some more news, and some youth groups in the northern region, spearheaded by Dagbon Malima Zong Damas, have hit the streets of Yendi to register their displeasure and frustration over the delay to insking a new overlord of Dagbon, dubbed Abudu Andani di Wum Ti Demo, literally meaning Abudu Andani were tired. Demo saw over thousands of people walk through some principal streets of Yendi to demonstrate against the delay in getting a new Yana. And shortly we will be speaking to our volunteer correspondent in Yendi, Sarahan Mohammed, to give us some updates on what exactly is happening there. So let's go via phone and speak to Sarahan Mohammed, who joins me. Hello, Mohammed.
Hello.
Now, what's the latest on this demonstration and the level of security there?
Okay, the level of security here is very tight. We have the SPU from the police service here, and the military is also heavily represented here. Currently, we are at the Yendi Municipal Assembly, where the youth group are petitioning the MCE to get their petition to the Flagstaff House so that the president will work on their demand. They are calling on the presidency, the chief of the bank, to bring lasting solution to this long dispute between Abudu and Andani, so far as the chieftaincy dispute of Dagbon is concerned. They are calling on whoever has a role to play in this matter to see that the youth are tired of the delay of getting a new Yana. And they have that today's demonstration at Duwumti, which is in Dabani, literally means we are tired of the delay.
All right, now, before I let you go, now, early on I mentioned that we did have a combination of Abudu's and Andani youth coming together. Is that the case?
Yeah,
there?
This is the case. This is not a demonstration from one gate. It is both gates, that is the Abudu's and Andani, who have come together to ensure that a lasting solution is brought to bear.
All right, well, thank you so much, Sarahan, for this updates. He will bring us some more as and when he gets them. You're still watching Midday Live. Remember, you can get interactive. Send your comments on our social media platforms. Facebook and Twitter is News on TV3. Now to one of our headline stories, and the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, has developed an app which predicts possible flooding hours before they occur. The app, known as Flash Flood Forecaster, and developed by the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, uses satellite data and a new generation of flood modeling techniques to accurately predict the area and extent of possible flooding some few hours before they occur, allowing residents to take appropriate sanctions. It can be downloaded from the Google Play Store. All right, so there's more on this flood app, and joining me this afternoon is Victor Adabo. He is an early warning expert at NADMO. Yeah. Good afternoon, and thanks for your time. Good afternoon. Now, what exactly, even though I've mentioned some of the things that the app could do, what exactly is this app? What does it do in its totality?
The app is supposed to model floods. It brings out areas which are likely to be flooded. It's an early warning tool. It gives you lead time of about 2 hours as to the likelihood of flood occurring in specific locations. Basically, that is what it does.
And now it can only be accessed from the Google Play Store?
Yes, currently it's available on Google Play Store. For now, it is available for Android applications.
And which persons are supposed to get this application?
It's available to the public. Anyone can access it. It's supposed to be part of our outreach to the public to let them have power in their own hands in terms of knowing where it is likely to get flooded. The issue of flooding and where it occurs sometimes is mystified. You know, it's like it's only the experts who know what's going to happen where. But this tool was supposed to, or is supposed to, put power in the hands of the public so that they can locate where that disaster could happen. Yeah. And
how long did it take NADMO to come up with this app? Because I'm sure if this had come up a lot more earlier, some of the flooding situations could have been averted, or loss of property and life as well.
Yep. The app came through a project, Community Resilience Through Early Warning, in short, CREW. It was funded by the Norwegian government and then also NADMO. The CREW project came out with a lot of applications and then also built several emergency operation centers in all 10 regions and then also 10 pilot districts. It provided early warning dashboards, that is web-based dashboards that allow you to locate drought and flooding countrywide. What brought up this app was due to a specific problem in Accra's situation. Accra has a history of flooding, and the problem with Accra and early warning is that as and when the flooding is occurring, you don't have enough lead time, because what happens in Accra's situation and most of our cities is what we call flash floods. That means when it rains, then it starts flooding. As soon as the rain stops, then the flooding subsides. So you don't have enough lead time. And so this app was developed due to that shortfall in lead time. And so what it does is it uses a special technology to give us about 2 hours lead time in terms of flooding in Accra's setting.
Now, in explaining how it works, if one downloads the app onto the phone, what next?
Basically, when you download the app onto your phone, you will have a map interface. Then it will have the visuals of rain-bearing clouds over the country. And what you do is there's a search button. You search for your location. And once it picks the location, the map opens, it shows your location, and it gives you the lead time in terms of time, as in hours. And then you can also do other functionalities on it. It's user-friendly.
Now,
yeah.
So Till, I'm sure not everyone has access to such Android phones and has access to even Google Play Store and the like. What happens till they get them? What happens? What is NADMO doing in relations to these early warning signs?
Yeah, what happens in terms of early warning? As part of our preparedness, we send out news alerts. It's true that not all are on perhaps smartphones and therefore will not have access to that information. And in terms of literacy issues, not everybody really understands how some of these things work. So what we do is, towards the flood seasons, based on historical knowledge, we know when the floods normally occur. We send news alerts via various media, radio, and also these are all part of early warning. you know. But this addition is supposed to bring us a little up in terms of technology. Yeah.
And has there been enough education on this, aside you using this platform?
In terms of reaching out to the media, we've done a lot of publicity in terms of local dialect information and all that. But with this app in particular, beside the launching that was done sometime September last year, not much publicity has been done.
Why?
In fact, we were expecting that the media houses we invited, you know, to cover will send the information out there.
But what are you doing as an organization? You don't leave it just in the hands of the media.
Yes. When we have the opportunity to interact with the public, and we are talking of early warning, we try to bring some of these things up. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Victor Adabo. He is an early warning expert at NADMO. Let's look at some more stories. And for students of Adaklu Senior High School in the Volta region, water is a prized asset. They struggle daily in their quest to get water, losing precious contact hours. Bright Nanalfo reports it is a daily struggle to get the commodity.
Up and early and ready for lessons. But one thing is needed: water to start the day. And so they march on like soldiers in battle. It is a battle to get water. Getting the commodity is indeed a tough battle. This is what they rely on when the Ghana National Fire Service supplies them water and it runs out. They come here, but it is such a dangerous task to do. It's a slippery ground, and if you're not careful, you're going to slip. And so they try all they can just to get water. This is how hard they have to try, just to get water for use daily in their activities. To reduce the drudgery with the search for water in parts of the Volta region, a project was started. The district was expected to get water. This is the project that was supposed to supply water to the Adaklu district, the 5-district water project with a base from Adidome in Central Town. It terminates here, and so there is water in here, but the people of Adaklu, all the communities there, cannot access water. Water was to be distributed to homes through overhead tanks, but they stand empty. Students now have to rely on unwholesome sources. The Adaklu Senior High School buys water at 1,200 cedis a tank a week, over 15,000 cedis a term. Water must therefore be carefully used.
And the school is spending a lot of money in buying water, so because they are supposed to bring water from Go to this place every week. When this thing is full, the poly tank, the full one we use it for just 2 days. The 3rd day they have to bring another water for us.
Students are at the losing end.
It is affecting our time management because as we are to leave the dormitory 6:30 a.m., considering the large population of the students, we can all afford to use this poly tank of water when the school authorities have provided them for us. So we all have to go to the riverside and then fetch. That before we come back, it is even late, and studies might have begun with these students who are already in.
Boreholes are scattered on the compound. In fact, some have pumps fixed on them. Polytanks are ready to harvest rainwater, but water is still a prized commodity. Boreholes simply can't supply water. The Member of Parliament for Adaklu, Kwame Agboja, confirmed in a conversation that efforts have been made and some technical persons are being brought in to get the boreholes to produce water. Until that is done, the students will have to rely on inadequate water from Ho or the river Wire or toji for use. Bright Nanamfo, TV3.
And also health, and the Princess Marie Louise Hospital in Accra is recording increasing cases of diarrhea. In the first quarter of this year alone, the hospital recorded 1,872 cases of diarrhea in children under 5. Acting director of the hospital is encouraging proper hygiene practices.
Diarrhea is a passage of 3 or more loose or liquid stools per day. According to the WHO, it is still the second leading cause of death globally among children under 5, which is about 1.5 million. Studies have shown that around 90% of all deaths associated with diarrhea occur in children under 5 years living in low and middle income countries. In Ghana, diarrhea kills 14,000 children annually. Diarrhea cases reported to the Princess Marie Louise Hospital from January to June this year was 1,872. Dr. Isaac Aban is acting medical head of Princess Marie Louise Hospital.
We see quite a significant number of children who present with diarrhea in the hospital. When they are very dehydrated, then it means we have to admit them, and then we have to use IV fluid.
Dr. Adban advised that good hygiene practice was the best way to go.
Diarrhea is very preventable. I mean, it's just having good hygienic practices, good hygiene, good drinking water, hand washing. These are simple things that don't even cost anything.
A trained analysis conducted by a nurse of the hospital, Benson Owusu, between 2011 and 2014 showed that a total of 2,081 diarrhea cases in children under 5 years were reported to the hospital. Out of this, majority were males, representing 1,254.
Now, what I've realized is that the peak of the condition was from 2011, but it started declining. And based on my research, I realized that it was as a result of the introduction of the rotavirus, which is a vaccine that we give to prevent diarrhea. And based on that, there has been a reduction. But even this, the reduction that we are talking about is still so not significant, looking at the number of cases that are still coming.
He was encouraged by government interventions, but expressed worry diarrhea cases still remain a difficult phenomenon to eradicate.
The government is actually doing well with the WASH project and other things, but we really have to intensify it, especially in areas where the conditions are, let me call it endemic, like Eshedu Keteke, Ablekuma, Choko, Glefe, and the rest.
Away from that story, a stakeholder consultative meeting on unlocking potential of the Northern Savannah Ecological Zone of Ghana under the African Development Bank transformation of the African Savannah Feed Africa project has ended in Accra. The economic transformation agenda is taking off with vibrant commercial agriculture and processing in June 2018. Eva Tiboka has details.
Ghana's agricultural development agenda has been on the drawing board since Nkrumah's era. It has been a lot of talk, but this time stakeholders are meeting, brainstorming and reviewing existing policies to turn the Northern Savannah Ecological Zone into an economic and agricultural hub.
Participants at the workshop all agreed the Ghanaian Savannah region has huge agricultural potentials, yet remained untapped. In an African Development Bank new development model, which focuses on transforming Savannah regions, over 400 hectares of land across 25 Savannah African countries is earmarked for vibrant commercial agriculture.
But the African Savannah is home to 239 million people. But those people live in poverty, and less than 10% of the savannah is used. So you have people living by the river, it's lots of water, but using spittle to wash their hands. It's unacceptable.
In pre-testing the development paradigm in the Northern Savannah Ecological Zone, a two-day stakeholder workshop pulled together national and international agronomists, scientists with great expertise and investors. Expertise who carried out an intensive crop and soil compatibility study in the zone draw a roadmap for take-off of the Feed Africa project under the transformation of the Savannah Initiative of the African Development Bank.
It's a good start. This mission we are allowed to see, particularly in agriculture, you need to understand the soil, you need to understand the quality of the roads and the machinery.
The Ghana Savannah region can become one of the bread baskets of Africa. And it's ripe for investment, and it's ripe for combinations of large-scale mechanized farming and small-scale farming.
Modeling the development path of successful countries, Brazil and Argentina shared their Savannah development models and stepping in with great technical and services expertise in the development of the zone. National and international farmers and service providers say they are well positioned to ensure success of the program. The Ministry of Food and Agriculture and Ghana's regional development body SADA are key partners in the program.
It's something which is out of this world for me, that the Savannah regions of Africa, the Savannah regions of Ghana, holding all the potential God can give us as a nation, have been so underexploited.
How we innovate policy, how we coordinate the innovation and spreading of technology, but how we innovate finance and how we pool that together. It's not just the general coordination around government, but that coordination concept should also inform the way we conceptualize the innovation centers.
And rehabilitation works geared at improving structures for the Kintampo waterfalls to ensure public safety is almost complete. TV3's Larry Parkwesi Moses toured the waterfall and brings us this report.
The Kintampo waterfalls recorded its highest fatality in living memory when natural disaster struck the tourism site on 19th March this year, claiming the lives of 18 students and injuring others. The incident necessitated the immediate closure of the waterfalls by the Ghana Tourism Authority for structural works to be carried out. About 500,000 cedis has been spent on renovation. Huge and old trees which surrounded the waterfalls have been cut down and landscaping is being undertaken at the basement. Speaking at the reopening of the waterfalls, the Vice President, Dr. Bawumia, regretted the tragic incident at the site which led to the death of 18 students. He stressed the need for stakeholders to guide and protect the country's tourism site. Minister for Tourism, Arts and Culture, Catherine Afeku, urged management of the facility to use funds generated at the facility judiciously.
You're still watching Midday Live. Do stay. Thanks for staying. Let's do business now. And the Chief Executive Officer of the Microfinance and Small Loans Center, MASLOC, Stephen Asamoah, says it will take some time for the economic policies of the NPP administration to reflect in the lives of citizens. Reacting to the 2018 budget statement, he mentioned that the budget will truly put Ghana to work and impact the lives of ordinary people.
The Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, in his 2018 budget presentation to Parliament on Wednesday, said that government is on track on making the economy a business-friendly one. He said it is for this reason that it has introduced tax cuts and have restored macroeconomic stability, which is protecting the value of money in the pockets of ordinary Ghanaians. He said government's broad agenda for next year is to translate the stability achieved into shared growth with aggressive policies aimed at creating more opportunities for jobs. Reacting to the budget, the Chief Executive Officer of the Microfinance and Small Loans Center, MASLOC, Stephen Asamoah, said these policies would take some time before it reflects in the lives of ordinary Ghanaians.
Our economy or investment field is basically the defensive type. That means its systematic risk index is less than 1. And what it means is that when the economy is going up or down, it doesn't readily affect these areas. It takes a long time. Definitely the impact of how well the economy is being managed will not readily affect them. This is true and it's real.
He called on Ghanaians to exercise some patience.
It will take quite some time for Ghanaians to practically feel it. So it's a matter of we giving them the right explanation. It's a matter of we educating them so that they will understand where we are taking them to. And I think it's being done. So Ghanaians should please exercise patience.
And still on the budget this afternoon, Ghana's economy has achieved relative stability and appears to be on the trajectory to recovery after numerous challenges it experienced in the past few years. So still on the budget, as I mentioned earlier on, let's go on the phone lines and speak to Franklin Cudjoe, who is the founding president of Imani. Good afternoon, Franklin, and thanks for your time.
Good afternoon, Wendy. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Now, what do you make of the budget? Some persons have mentioned that it is overly ambitious, while some say that it will make Ghana business friendly. What's your take on the budget?
Well, for starters, the budget has indeed focused on job creation, industrialization, and indeed the agribusiness as well. I mean, the agriculture sector is supposed to be given a good boost. In general, yes, the budget does in fact looks ambitious, just that the expenditure patterns or the expenditure plans themselves are not necessarily what we had hoped for. Don't forget that the government needs to, or believes that it needs to reduce the deficit that we have. And so that may be constraining the extent of the expenditure. At the same time, the revenue situation hasn't been particularly good. So the positives of the budget in terms of the macroeconomic figures, which we obviously are happy about, are coming on the back of constrained spending and indeed also as a result of reduced revenue inflows. But however, a few sectors that need some, should I call it clarification? If you look at the, I mean, of course, there's a plan to create jobs, which should fall under employment. Incidentally, there's supposed to be some promise of 100,000 jobs guaranteed for graduates. Now, if you look at the fact that the hefty amount, which is almost 600 million Ghana cedis, has been allocated for that enterprise, it doesn't necessarily sync well with some of us, because what the funds are supposed to be used for does not in any way differentiate its purpose from the National Service Scheme, which gives graduates an additional year of, if you like, some hands-on training. The point I'm making is that the 600 million Ghana cedis could have been prudently applied to the NEIP, for instance, to ensure that graduates who wanted to take up startup capital would compete for the funds. So that becomes quite competitive and entrepreneurial as well. To the extent that the fund 600 million Ghana cedis has not been properly, detailed as to what exactly, what productive sectors of the economy they'll be spent, is a bit worrying, because for graduates to go into revenue collection, areas of teaching, possibly sanitation and what have you, unfortunately is not in sync with the government's own agenda of creating an entrepreneurial enclave and then, of course, enhancing agribusiness. Some would have thought, we certainly think, that a portion of that money could have been utilized in the agribusiness sector, for instance, in order to shore up agriculture, given that the entire agriculture sector took a significant cut of about 21%. I'm not talking about the planting for food and jobs, which also did get some money, But it would have been somehow prudent that the agribusiness part of the chain could have been focused so that graduates may be, may be asked or may be interested in getting into the agribusiness sector. Then, of course, if you thought that in the agriculture sector itself, cocoa farmers are getting aged, as well as crop farmers, it was important to intensely, incentivize people to go into the sector. That said, there's also the issues around infrastructure. If you look at the allocations for public infrastructure and the budget, in total, there's a 31% cut for almost all the sectors under infrastructure, with transportation taking a significant cut of about 83%. Now, this is quite challenging.
Now, if I can cut you there, Frank, you've mentioned some of these pointers, the positives and the negatives. For the negatives, do you think that these are issues that should be addressed here now, or it should take some time so that the corrections are made along the way?
Well, I think some of the issues ought to be corrected, especially on the issues of public infrastructure. Now, I was making the point that even though there's been a significant cut, the government may suggest, for instance, that the private sector would come in to, take care of the shortfalls. But the challenge with that path is that the PPP bills, the public-private partnership bills, that should enhance the deliberate interventions or investments in the private sector, in the public sector, unfortunately haven't been passed. So one good way would be for the government to fast-track the passage of the PPP bills, and I would have thought that the passage of the PPP bills would have been the topmost priority even before the office of the Special Prosecutor's Bill. But then we can still ask for it. So there are a number of things that ought to be done. Of course, there's the education aspect as well, which I'm sure now that reality has dawned, I think voluntary donations may be useful, but it ought to be properly defined. Okay. And I would even suggest that we scale up and ask for corporate social responsibility from companies into education.
Thank you so much.
They must get some rewards for it.
Thank you, Franklin Kojo, for your time. He's the founding president of Imani Ghana. Next, we have sports. Thank you very much indeed, Yao Ofosilabi. Next, we have international news.
Must be put behind as we all embrace a new ethos predicated on the supreme law of our party and nourished by an abiding sense of camaraderie. To all this must be a general recognition that ZANU-PF is a party of traditions and has been served by successive generations who are bound together by shared ideals and values which must continue to reign supreme in our nation. Hints of intergeneration conflict must be resolved through a harmonized melding of old established players as they embrace and welcome new rules, new ones through a well-defined sense of hierarchy and succession. Indeed, all these matters.
So that was President Mugabe addressing Zimbabwe and nationalities across the world. And shortly, we'll bring you some more updates on what's happening in Zimbabwe as and when we get them. Next, we have entertainment.
Entertainment news is brought to you by
And Zainab beat of competition from Sewa Baba and Nana to emerge ultimate winner of Ghana's Most Beautiful 2017. The Northern Region's Pride believes the win is a reflection of hard work she put into the competition over the last 3 months.
DMB 2017.
Straight out of Ghana.
Goes to Zainab.
All right, so I'm all smiles because I do have the beauty queen here with me, Ghana's Most Beautiful 2017. Congratulations, Zainab.
Thank you.
How do you feel about all this?
I feel so happy and grateful. I don't even know how to express myself because I'm so happy.
Did you see this coming?
At a point, I didn't see it coming because Sewa, Baba, Nana, they are all doing so well, just as I'm doing. But then it got to a time that I was like, Zainab, are you ready for this? And then I just pushed myself a little bit, and then I made it through.
Indeed, you made it through. You have all that comes with it, the car and everything that comes in addition. But what's next for you? What should Ghanaians look out for?
Okay, so I'm a student, so I'll go back to school. I'm in my final year, and when I'm done with that, I'll then launch on my project, which is on maternal mortality, to reduce maternal mortality in Ghana. But you know, I'll start from my region.
And what do you intend doing specifically?
I'll create awareness and sensitize the people, creating awareness to the mothers and some of the people in our community who don't really like going to the hospital, and also to sensitize herbal doctors and herbal mothers, so that they'll have a little bit of training when they are delivering our mothers. They'll know the kind of things to do to help them, so that it wouldn't have any
wish you the very best, Zainab.
Thank you
Congratulations
very much.
once
Thank
again.
you very much.
All right, then, so let's move on to other stories away from entertainment. And on a rather sad note, Multimedia Group Limited has organized a memorial service in commemoration of their deceased presenter, Kwadwo Asare Bafo-Champong, popularly known as Kaba. People who eulogized him described him as a hero in the media.
People from all walks of life converged at the forecourt of Joy FM to partake in the memorial service in remembrance of Kaba, one of Multimedia Group's astute presenters. Key among the attendants includes political figures and media practitioners. It was a solemn mood for all. The deceased journalist was eulogized by many.
We must all be asking for grace and mercy. Our hearts are broken is an understatement. Yen to me, because our hearts are broken here, Janissa. We are deeply in sorrow.
Some members of parliament described Kaba as a hero whose program, Ikosi Sang, has contributed to shaping the political landscape.
As politicians, we worked with Kaba, host of the most authoritative afternoon political talk show program. And anytime Kaba interviews you, you notice that this was an exceptional journalist. He didn't call you with an agenda. There was no mischief intended. He was simply professional.
Multimedia Group was represented by its Chief Operating Officer.
Indeed, he's someone who never stopped pursuing wisdom. So in my second coming to multimedia, and in my very first weeks, we had laid out so many plans for his program. And of course, within a matter of 2 weeks, we had started deploying some of these, to his delight and to my delight as well. On Friday, when I didn't hear his voice at 2 p.m., I sensed there was something wrong. So I checked with his manager, who said to me, Kaba wasn't feeling too well, and so he has asked him to go home.
Kwejo Asari Balfour Champon died at age 37 after a short illness. Until his demise, Kaba, as popularly called, was the host of Asempa FM's afternoon political talk show, Ekosi Saying. The late Kaba got married last year to a colleague journalist and left behind a 7-month-old daughter. Kaba is also the only child of his parents.
May his soul rest in peace. And President of the Ghana Journalists Association, Afo Moni, has urged journalists to prioritize their health.
There's empirical evidence that every journalist at 30-something is stressed out because of the nature of our work. You know, our job imposes pressure. We have incessant deadlines to beat. We have programs to review. Even in the face of deep-set fatigue, we are obliged to render peak performance. So all this imposes pressure on us. So it will take the grace of God, indeed it takes the grace of God to sustain some of us in this business. But the point should be articulated that we need to be alive to do our job. And this reinforces the need for every journalist to prioritize his or her health issues and needs.
And that's all for Midday Live. My name is Wendy Lai. Thanks for watching.